In this lesson, we're going to learn the basics of lights and how to place and manipulate them in our scene. Alright, so to get started with creating lights, we need to go to our Modes panel. Inside of the Modes panel, you'll see Lights. You'll left-click on that, and you'll see that we have 4 different types of lights that we can create. We have Directional, which is a light that simulates a light source that is infinitely far away, so it's kind of like simulating sunlight. We also have a Point Light, which simulates light that is emitted from a single point in all directions, so it's going to have a spherical shape to it. Then we have Spotlight, which simulates light that is emitted from a single point in a cone shape. So this is going to be much like a flashlight. And then we also have a Skylight, which captures the distance parts of a level and applies it to the scene. So it's going to sample colors from our skylight and then place those on other objects in the scene. So to get started with this, let's learn how to place these lights into the scene. We're going to start out with a Point Light because this is one of the most commonly used lights in all of your levels that you'll see. Okay, they're very, very flexible. So let's go ahead and left-click and drag that into the scene, and we'll drop that. Now you'll notice that that is in the scene, but it doesn't appear like anything has happened. And the reason for that is because our view mode is set to unlit. Let's go ahead and left-click on that and set that to lit, and we'll see that change. So there's our light in the scene. Now we can also bring in the other lights the exact same way, but I want to show you a different way. Let's go ahead and right-click on a surface, and then we're going to go to Place Actor, and then we'll say Light, Directional Light, Spotlight, or Point Light. Now I know that goes off screen there, but you'll see that in the section. You'll also see what's been recently placed, and you can choose that as well. Alright, so either way will work. Let's go ahead and actually add one of those. I'll add a Point Light just really quickly, and you'll see that that adds right where I had right-clicked on the surface. Go ahead and delete that, and we'll just have the one Point Light. So now let's talk about manipulating these lights. To do this, we need to select those, and then we can use W, E, and R to move, rotate, or scale. You could also switch up what tool you want to use right up here in the toolbox. So I'm going to move this up in the Z, and I'll drag that up, and you'll see that the light is being emitted from the light source out in all directions. Okay, so this is a Point Light. You can also rotate this light, but it's really not going to do anything because it is a spherical shape. So if you rotate a sphere, it's still a sphere. We could go ahead and scale this as well, hitting R on the keyboard. You could scale it, and that's going to adjust the attenuation radius of your light. But normally what I like to do is I like to make adjustments to that right here on the properties. Let me go ahead and reset that value there, hitting that yellow arrow. So point lights are pretty easy. Most of the control is through the positioning, so using the move tool, and then the scale to adjust the attenuation. Let's go ahead and bring in a spotlight. Left-click and drag that into the scene, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my move tool, hitting W, and I'm going to pull that over in the Y direction, pull it up in the Z, and I'm going to put it right here on this hole that's in the side of the cave. So I'll put it right up there. Let me raise that up some, pull that over in the Y, and then you'll notice that by default it's pointing straight down. But in this case I want it to point as if light is coming through that hole. So let's grab our rotation tool, hitting E on the keyboard to do so, and then rotate it along the Y. Okay, so there we've rotated that. The spotlight is now pointing sideways through our cave here. Now you'll notice it has a much different shape than our point light. Okay, it's more of a cone shape. Now we'll be talking about how to manipulate that shape here in just a little while. So now we also have the directional light, and we already have one in the scene. So let's go ahead and select this light source in our scene outliner, and let's hit F on the keyboard, and you'll see that it draws the camera out to where we can view that. The most important thing to remember about the directional light is it does simulate something like sunlight, and so really 1 is a good value to have, or 1 is a good amount to have in your scene. The most important thing about the directional light is its rotation. The overall positioning doesn't matter. Okay, it could be inside the cave, it could be outside the cave, it could be above or below. It doesn't matter. What matters is the rotation of the light. You'll see this little white arrow on that, and that is going to give us the direction in which that directional light is pointing. So I can rotate this light, and you'll notice that that begins to change. Okay, so if I wanted to take that 90 degrees there, bring it back toward me, I'm more than welcome to do so. Now let's go inside of our scene here, and you'll see that light is being poured in from this hole onto our ground surface, and that's based on the direction of our directional light. Now I want it to kind of point off in this direction a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just simply grab it along that Z, and I'll rotate that a little bit. But let's rotate that this direction, so that way it's kind of pointing off here. If you want, you can take a look at the rotation values. I'll show you those. So just match those values there, and that's what that looks like. All right, perfect. So let's go into our scene here, and you can see that that light pours in and starts to shine on the side of our cave. All right, that looks great. So now let's take a look at our final light type, and that is our skylight. If I left-click and drag this into the scene, it doesn't matter where it's positioned, and it doesn't matter if it's rotation or even scaled, because it doesn't work that way. What it does is it captures the light information or the color information from the outside world and brings that in and applies it to all of our surfaces. Now that's based on the source type, but we'll talk about that later. So point lights can be moved, so they can be positioned. Doesn't matter about their rotation. Their scale is going to adjust its attenuation. Cone lights, they can be moved or rotated. Okay, that's a direct effect. You could also scale them, and that's also going to adjust their attenuation. Directional lights, they can be rotated. Their position does not matter. And then skylights, it doesn't matter where it's positioned or even where it's rotated. Okay, so we can leave that just the way it is. So in our next lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the lighting properties of our lights. And we'll start out with this point light, and then we'll go through the major properties, and then we'll talk about some of the specific properties of the other lights. And we'll get into that next.